Changes to Waqf Bill proposed by JPC now cleared by Cabinet. The Union Cabinet on Thursday cleared all the 14 amendments of the Waqf Amendment Bill 2024 proposed by the Joint Parliamentary Committee last month. It is likely to be tabled in the Parliament in second half of the budget session, which starts on March 10. The bill was introduced in August last year to amend the Waqf Act 1995, which governs the management of Waqf properties in India. It proposed sweeping changes which gives the government a foot in the door in regulating Waqf properties and settling disputes regarding such properties. Amidst criticism from opposition, the bill has been referred to JPC. On January 27, the committee headed by the BJP MP Jagdambika Pal cleared 14 amendments proposed by the BJP and its allies, while rejecting 44 amendments proposed by the opposition. The amendments cleared by the JPC and now the Union Cabinet address some of the more contentious parts of the bill. The 2024 bill required every Waqf and the property dedicated to the Waqf to be registered on a central portal and database within 6 months of the law's commencement. Any government property in this database would be flagged to the district collector, who would then make such inquiries as he deems fit. The JPC accepted an amendment proposed by the JDU MP Dileshwar Kamayat, relaxing the timeline for registering a Waqf property in certain cases, provided the Mutawalli provides sufficient cause for not filing the Waqf on the portal. Amended bill thus gives Waqf Tribunal the power to extend the timeline in select cases. However, given the circumstances which can be considered sufficient and period of extension not specified, the tribunal will have to exercise its discretion. The JPC also accepted another consequent amendment by BJP MP Dr. Radha Mohan Das Agarwal. The 24 amendment bill stated 6 months after the proposed law's commencement, no suit appeals or legal proceedings can be filed by Waqf if they are not registered under the central portal. This essentially means not registering on the portal would result in forfeiting the right to move to court in case of an encroachment or any other dispute involving a Waqf land. The amendment proposed by Agrawal extends this timeline to adding courts can allow to file suits subject to Waqf submitting an affidavit on why it did not register on the portal within 6 months. The 2024 bill gave district collector the powers that were previously given with the Waqf tribunal. The bill stated any government property identified or declared as Waqf property before or after the commencement of the act shall not be deemed to be a Waqf property. This determination, however, was made by the collector and not the Waqf tribunal. The bill also added that until the government makes a decision, the disputed property will be treated as government property and not Waqf property. From the state government taking over functioning of Waqf tribunal and judging its own case against a Waqf to a prima facie presumption in favor of government on ownership of property, several concerns were raised about this provision. The JPC accepted 4 amendments proposed by Telugu Desam MP to replace district collectors in the dispute resolution process to a more senior officer of the state government. The so-called designated officer will be responsible for making necessary changes to the revenue records if a property is deemed to be a government property and not a Waqf property. The 2024 bill proposed allowing a non-Muslim chief executive officer and at least 2 non-Muslim members to be appointed by state governments to the Waqf boards at the state level, and the JPC accepted BJP MP Avijit Gangopadhyay's amendment to this provision, which states that state government official who is part of the Waqf board shall be a joint secretary level officer dealing with Waqf matters. Another amendment accepted by the JPC was by BJP Rajya Sabha MP Ghulam Ali, who proposed making it mandatory to have a member in the Waqf tribunal with knowledge of Muslim law and jurisprudence. The previous version of the Waqf bill proposed that the tribunal have a sitting or retired district judge as chairperson and a joint secretary level officer of the state government as a member. Market crash. Why? What now? Sensex at BSE fell 1.9% on Friday to a close at a 8-month low. led to the rout, what happens now. Several reasons for the crash and opportunities in large caps. What led to accelerated fall in markets on Friday? A lot of things have combined to produce the fall. Some earning disappointments and high valuations have been key reasons for foreign investors to leave. But there are several other factors that push them to take that call. Because of President Donald Trump's America First policy and asking investors to invest in the US, people are committing money there. He is also talking about tax cuts, which would mean higher profits after tax. With capital moving to dollars, the US dollar has been strengthening against emerging market economies, and that is only adding the trend from the currency point of view. Also, since the returns on US high yield bonds are equal to the returns on Indian equity, investors feel they should invest in US bonds. It is also important to note that while India has outperformed and developed markets over the past several years, emerging markets as a group have underperformed, and that is leading to the outflow from all emerging markets, including India. On the domestic front, there has been a slowdown in the Indian economy. Corporate results have been somewhat below expectations, and they came when valuations were high and weakened this investor sentiment. Markets are often driven by flows rather than fundamentals. When they go up above the fair value, and when they come down, they fall below the fair value. With the fall over the last 5 to 6 months, the Nifty has come below its historical average. And it is important to point out that FPIs are selling because they are buyers in the market. Domestic institutional investors have been buying in the as the retail inflow continues. Are investors continuing with their investments? High net worth individuals are more worried, but retail investors are investing regularly. So there is more stability on the small investor front. What should investors do at this point? The choice is this: should they join the FPIs and sell their holdings, or should they buy when FPIs are selling? Following the correction in valuations, expected returns across many sectors have gone up. There is no point selling unless you are heavily overweight on momentum stocks. Investors should consider investing in staggered manner as more corrections may come following the sell off by FPIs. Return on equity in India is one of the highest in the world. Our fundamentals are good, and once the FPI stop selling, the prices will not remain where they are. The market is marginally below the fair value, and it is still not cheap. Therefore, they should invest in a gradual manner. Investors should go for high quality stocks or large cap schemes of mutual funds instead of momentum stocks or small cap or mid cap schemes. Even mutual funds have been buying high quality stocks that are available at a good price. They can look at multi asset allocation funds, which act as private bankers to retail investors. Are markets reacting to Trump tariffs? I don't think tariffs are the most important factor. The most important factors are domestic. The markets are not reacting to external world only. The reality is that Indian economy has slowed down a bit in the past 6 months. Also, stock valuations have been on a higher side, and we have been saying that the mid and small cap side of the market were expensive and correction was due. China grew at 10% for 35-40 years despite the tariffs that were imposed on it and removed, and various other external factors. Why? Because they got their domestic side of the economy right. They got their housing and urbanization right, and then the economy sustained itself. As long as the current account deficit is fine, international crude oil prices don't go to 200 per barrel, and the Indian economy is fairly resilient. Tariffs are not a big factor. Why are foreign portfolio investors pulling out? If it is the current account that reflects the reality of the economy, there is capital flow that reflects the mood swings of the investors and perceived risk and perceived causes which may not be that relevant. We have been saying for a while that small and mid cap segment of the market was expensive and that a correction was due. Now, if it has happened, many would see as to what happened over the last 1 month and ascribe it as a cause. That cause relation may or may not exist. If I would, if I wouldn't attribute to that. If you look at some of the selling that has occurred, why are foreign portfolio investors pulling out? If it is if in the it is the current account that reflects the reality of the economy, there is capital flow that reflects the mood swings of investors and perceived risk and perceived costs. We have been saying for a while that small and mid cap segments of the markets were expensive and that correction was due. Now, if it has happened, many would see as what happened over the last 1 month or ascribe it as a cause. That causal relation may or may not exist, and I wouldn't attribute to that. There is no fundamental instability in the Indian economy. The current account deficit is fine and the rate of inflation is fine. Corporate and bank balance sheets are healthy. The only thing is that there is weak demand, but I think that is an easily solvable problem. Monetary and fiscal policy tools can be used to address weak demand, and we got some fiscal support in the union budget, and I do hope we continue to get more support from the monetary side. So, given there is no macroeconomic instability issue in the Indian economy, given that it is only an issue of demand and RBI is supportive of demand, I do believe that Indian economy will regain momentum. And once it regains momentum, capital flows will come back. It may take a quarter or two, but as long as the monetary policy is supportive, there is no reason to believe that the economy will continue to languish. The only thing I would watch is the housing sector. We need the housing sector to sustain recovery. So I would want housing prices to ease off so that demand picks up and the housing activity recovers. So the factors that impacts the Indian economy are mostly domestic. If monetary policy support continues and the housing activity recovers, the economy should do well. Will the announcements in the budget on the income tax cuts help? Yes, it will lead to both consumption and investment spends, and that should help. I would also want monetary support to be there, and monetary support is easier to reverse once the revival takes place. What led to the accelerated fall in the markets on Friday? A lot of things have combined to produce the fall. Some earning disappointments and high valuations have been the key reasons for foreign investors to leave. But there are several other factors because of President Donald Trump's America First policy and asking investors to invest in the US. People are committing money there. He is also talking about tax cuts, which means higher profits after tax. With capital moving to dollars, the US dollar has begun strengthening against the emerging market currencies, and that is only the trend from currency point of view. Also, since the return on US high yield bonds are equal to the return on Indian equity, investors feel they should invest in US bonds. It is important to note that while India has outperformed and developed markets over the past several years, economies as a markets as a group have underperformed. That is leading to the outflow from all emerging markets, including India. So, on a domestic front, there has been a slowdown in the Indian economy. Corporate results have been somewhat below expectations, and they came when valuations were high and weakened the investor sentiment. On the market, will the markets fall further? Markets are often driven by flows rather than fundamentals. When they go up above the fair value. When they come down, they fall below the fair value. It is important to point out that FPIs are selling because there are buyers in the market. Domestic institutional investors have been buying as the retail inflow continues. High net worth individuals are more worried, but retail investors are investing regularly. So there is more stability in the small investor front. The choice is this: should they join the FPIs and sell their holdings, or should they buy when FPIs are selling? Following the correction in valuations, expected returns across many sectors have gone up. There is no point selling unless you are heavily overweight on the momentum stock. Investors should consider investing in a staggered manner as more corrections may come following the sell-off by FPI's. Return on equity in India is one of the highest in the world. Our fundamentals are good, and once the FPI stops selling, the prices will not remain where they are. The market is marginally below the fair value and it is still not cheap. Therefore, they should invest in a gradual manner. Investors should go for high quality stocks or large cap schemes of mutual funds instead of momentum stocks. I don't think tariffs are the most important factor. The most important factors are domestic. The markets are not reacting to the external world only. The reality is that Indian economy has slowed down a bit in past 6 months. Also, stock valuations have been on a higher side, and we have been saying that mid and small cap side of the market was expensive and correction was due. China grew at a rate of 10% for 35 to 40 years despite the tariffs were imposed. As long as current account deficit is fine and oil prices don't go to $200 per barrel, Indian economy is fairly resilient. Legacy of Khusraw, musical flag bearers of Sufism's pluralistic tradition. In his address to the 25th edition of Jahan-e-Khusro at Delhi's Sundar Nursery on Friday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi described the annual music festival that commemorates the Sufi poet musician Amir Khusro as imbued with fragrance of soil of Hindustan, bestowed with the sobriety of Tutiya-Hind, the parrot of India. The 13th century mystic is seen as a father figure in North India's syncretic Ganga Jamuni culture. Khusro made lasting contributions to Indian classical music and Qawwali and is also credited for developing Hindavi, a precursor to modern Hindi and Urdu. Much of what is known about Khusro comes from his own writings, which are interspersed and with autobiographical information. Khusro's father came to India from Central Asia in the early 13th century as the Mongol hordes of Genghis Khan ravaged Islamic Transoxiana, corresponding to parts of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. He entered the service of Sultan Iltutmish and married the daughter of an Indian Muslim. The couple's second child, Abul Hasan Yamin Khusro, was born in 1253. Khusro was proud of both sides of his lineage, and his life and writing symbolize a synthesis of two different cultures. A collection of Khusro's poems, the poets often referred to him as Indian Turk. It is believed that Khusro was born in Patiali in present-day Etah district of Uttar Pradesh, but the poet himself never mentioned his birthplace. Khusro became a professional poet at the age 20 and served as one until his death. He started out in the service of princes and nobles before becoming a permanent fixture in the court of Delhi Sultan. In medieval Islamic culture, praise poetry was one of the principal means for the ruler to establish and propagate his cultural and political legitimacy. The court poet demanded depended on continued patronage of his patron and always faced a complete and ample complete competition. Khusro served at least five sultans: Muizzuddin Qaidabad, Jalaluddin Khilji, Alauddin Khilji, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah, and Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and many other powerful patrons over the 5 decades, which testify to the quality of his poetry. He wrote in Persian, the language of the court, as well as Hindi. Sultan Jalaluddin Khilji bestowed upon Khusro the title of Amir, and the medieval historian Ziauddin Barani wrote in Ziauddin wrote in Tariq-e-Firoz Shahi that Jalaluddin held Khusro in great esteem, and Khusro served as the keeper of Quran in his court. Khusro was the most beloved disciple of Chishti Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia. He is the keeper of my secrets, and I shall not set foot in the paradise without him. If it were lawful, I should have instructed you to bury him in the same grave with me, so that we may too we two may remain always remain together. The Peer is said to have said, quoted in Muhammad Wahid Mirza, The Life and Works of Amir Khusro, Khusro was equally respected in royal court as well as Sufi masters Khanqa. Neither the king nor the saint ever suspected the fidelity or loyalty of Khusro, who frequented the opposite camps with equal respect and honor. Scholar Saifullah Safi wrote in Sufi poet Amir Khusro, a link between court and Khanqa, published in regional Sufi centers in India. Master and disciple died within months of each other in 1325. When he heard of Pir's passing, Khusro is said to have uttered these words: Beauty sleeps on the bed, her hair across her face. Come, Khusro, let's go home. Night has set over this place. 700 years after his death, the lyrical beauty, sophisticated wordplay, and exploration of diverse themes in Khusro's poetry continue to enamor audiences. On the one hand, he wrote eulogies for kings and princes. On the other hand, he wrote riddles and jingles, word games, homely songs for children, housewives, and love-sick maidens, and tired old men. In the form and content, Khusro's poetry borrowed heavily from Persian and Turkic as well as local influences, making him one of the most important figures in propagating a syncretic Hindu Muslim culture. He wrote highly of Hindus. The Brahmins of India have greater wealth of philosophical thought than what Rumi had revealed, as nobody had tried to learn from the Brahmins. Their learning has not been revealed to the world. He wrote in Masnavi Nur Sifir, quoted in Indian literary. Khusraw's ghazals and qawwalis are today sung in both sacred and secular context and Sufi dargahs and Bollywood musicals. His most popular compositions include Chap Tilak, Zahel-e-Maskeen, Sakal, Banful, etc. However, his musical contributions likely go further than this. Khusro is said to be instrumental in the development of modern Indian classical music. He is credited with crafting dozens of ragas, creating ornate khayal music, and inventing the sitar and tabla, even though the evidence for that is limited. Who are the PKK, Kurdish armed group fighting against Turkey? For more than 4 decades, Turkey has been fighting an armed insurgency by the Kurdish Workers' Party or the PKK, a militant group that says it seeks greater rights for the country's Kurdish minority. Now, PKK's founder Abdullah Öcalan has called on Turkish fighters to lay down their arms. However, it remains unclear how effective his plea will be, and what, if anything, the Turkish government is offering the group in exchange for ending the fighting. The group launched an armed insurgency against the Turkish state in the early 1980s, originally seeking independence for the Kurds, who are believed to make up about 15% or more of the Turkey's population. Starting from mountains in eastern and southern Turkey, PKK fighters attacked Turkish military bases and police stations, prompting harsh government responses. Later, the conflict spread to other parts of the country with devastating PKK bombings in Turkey's cities and killed many civilians. In 1999, Turkey captured Öcalan and convicted him of leading an armed terrorist group. He received a death sentence and was later commuted to life in prison. Since his incarceration, Öcalan has shifted his ideology away from secession and towards Turkish rights inside Turkey. Kurdish rights inside Turkey. Over the past decade, Turkish military has routed PKK forces and major Kurdish cities in southeastern Turkey. The Kurds are an ethnic group of roughly 40 million people. There are widely varying estimates and concentrated in Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. They speak multiple dialects of Kurdish, a language not directly related to Turkish or Arabic. Most are Sunni Muslims. The Kurds were promised a nation of their own by world powers after the World War I, but was never granted. There were Kurdish rebellions in various countries following generations, and Kurds have faced state suppression of their language and culture. In Syria, the Kurdish led Syrian Democratic Forces, whose leaders have roots in the PKK and follow Öcalan's ideology, control the northeastern part of the country. They have been backed by years by the United States and played a crucial role in defeating Islamic State. But the fall of Syrian strongman Bashar al-Assad in December has left their future status unclear. Since the 1991 Gulf War was largely Kurdish, northern region of Iran has been semi-autonomous. Multiple efforts to freeze or end the Turkish PKK conflict have been made, starting with a ceasefire in 1993, but all of them collapsed. Violence flared on and off until a new round of peace talks began in 2011, but the process collapsed in mid 2015, with each side blaming the other for the failure. Mela of Unity and Diversity, Mahakumbh showcased the spiritual oneness of India. The six week long Mahakumbh has come to an end. Analysts though are still commenting about the crowds, arrangements, water quality and devotion of millions who thronged Prayagraj. Prime Minister Narendra Modi too penned his thoughts, calling his mammoth congregation Ekta Ka Mahakumbh, the Mahakumbh of Unity. It is hard to predict the exact number of people who visited the Mela and took a holy dip in the sacred waters at the confluence of Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati, but it is undeniable that the numbers this time were mind boggling. The Mahakumbh at Prayagraj was the first Kumbh to take place in the era of omnipresent social media. Popular mediums of communication such as YouTube, Instagram, and X proved perfect platforms for more people to know about the grandeur and sacredness of the event, and many proceeded to take part in it. There is no denying the FOMO factor. Photographs and videos of people taking a dip instantly reached remote corners of the country and encouraged many more to undertake the pilgrimage. The FOMO factor should not be dismissed. Instead, it should be seen as a demonstration of the deep-seated spiritual calling of the Hindus. On earlier occasions, the number of devotees were known to diminish towards the Mela's end. However, this time crowds kept swelling until the end. Nobody was willing to miss this once in 144 years occasion. Some armchair intellectuals try to find ways to criticize the Kumbh Mela. Nobody claims that there were no lapses. Two tragedies led to painful loss of lives, but the way the central and state administrations conducted the task of managing millions of service deserve praise. We hosted ministers from several countries where people of Indian origin live in large numbers. For them, such crowds were unimaginable. One minister commented that population equal to that his entire country was in front of him. It was fascinating for many of them, but also intimidating to some. Some of them found perfect urban management lessons in the arrangements made by the administration. Prayagraj is a city of 1.4 million people. It took many pilgrims from all over the world every hour during Kumbh, yet the civic administration did not collapse. That proves the efficient management of the event. One columnist bemoaned that Kumbh Mela was symbolic of the codification of Hinduism and the destruction of its spirit of diversity. Taking a holy dip in sacred waters exists in every stream of Hinduism, and hence describing the same as Prayagraj as performative or obligatory and accusing it of the Semitism of Hinduism is ill informed. Hinduism is pluralist and diverse, but it always had an inherent streak of unity. Hinduism represents unity in diversity. It stood for the idea of Sarv Panth Samandar, an equal respect for all ways of worship. But in the Bhagavad Gita, through Bhagwan Krishna, it also called upon people to serve dharma paritagya mam ekam sharnam vraja. Leave all religious doctrines aside and just find solace in me. Occasions like the Kumbh Mela were designed to promote both spiritual principles. Prayagraj was replete with gurus from hundreds of different faiths and traditions. Hence, the worry that the diversity of Hinduism is threatened is unfounded. The great sages of yore had also emphasized the spiritual oneness of national society. Melas and pilgrimage are meant to promote the idea of innate unity. Adi Shankara, one of the greatest sages of Hinduism, established the four mutts, Hindu monasteries in four corners, to bring semblance of unity among the diverse Hindu sects who worship deities like Shiv, Vishnu, Shakti, Ganesh, and Surya. He propagated Advaita Vedanta, a non-dualistic philosophy emphasizing the oneness of individual soul and divine spirit. Like the Kumbh Mela, Adi Shankara's Advaita Vedanta too was not an effort to destroy the diversity in Hindu religious practices. His teachings provide a framework to reconcile diverse beliefs and practices, including those of Buddhists and Sanatanis. It was that unity which was witnessed at the Kumbh Mela. Prime Minister summed up this beautifully. At this Ekta Ka Mahakumbh, every pilgrim, whether rich or poor, young or old, from villages or cities, from India or abroad, from east or west, from north or south, irrespective of caste, creed, or an ideology, came together. This was an embodiment of the vision of Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat that filled confidence in crores of people. Massive religious congregations are known in Islam and Christianity as well. The Shias, the annual multi-day Arbain pilgrimage to the shrine of Ali and the grandson of Muhammad and the third Shia Imam is a big religious affair. This pilgrimage marks the martyrdom of Hussein and takes place annually at Karbala in Iraq. An estimated 20 million people attend the pilgrimage. Equally important and relatively small pilgrimage for the Muslims is the Hajj to Mecca, which brings 3 to 4 with million followers from all over the world to the holy city. For the Christians too, festivals like Semana Santa in Spain and Sinulog in Philippines attract millions of followers. Kumbh Mela undoubtedly much bigger and more inclusive than many of these festivals. Importantly, as PM Modi pointed out, it has now acquired a stature of global occasion. It attracts people of all religions in several nations. It may be the time for the PM to consider handing over the management of future Kumbh Melas to a national body so that its global stature can be further enhanced and Indian spiritual traditions are showcased before the world in a fitting manner. New normal. This refers to the report gave no notice, raised shop due to complaint crowd, civics chief of Malwan. This is a self-incriminating admission by the Malwan municipal chief Santosh Jigre that he bypassed the due process of law because he received a complaint by the owner of the land where the shop stood, a letter from local MLA, and a crowd of 200 to 300 people, which necessitated the demolition of shops. This reminds one of the Supreme Court's observation about the new normal in mob lynching cases. However, two differences are noticeable. First, here the victim is the property, not an individual, and second, the property was not demolished by vigilantes but by the government itself. This refers to the article Mahakumbh for New India. The organization of Mahakumbh on a gigantic scale deserves fresh research. Planning, execution, direction, control, and coordination of massive crowds for a long period should be one of the themes. It is a subject for deep study of unique blending of tradition and religious practices with technological advancements. The digitization of lost and found services advanced technologies to enhance safety and coordination and the artificial intelligence cameras that could count the number of people present in any given place have received high praise. Another topic is how Kumbh Mahakumbh, which attracted 66.3 crore devotees, was kept clean with robust sanitation infrastructure. This refers to the article there aren't many options for athletes. Badminton legend Gopi Chand has discouraged middle class parents from investing everything they have in their children's sporting careers. It is a long struggle for parents and players in any sport. The advent of private leagues and sports like kabaddi, hockey, football, apart from cricket, has brought much needed money into the games. But we should not assume that this is going to be a smooth ride for middle class children. A balance between study and sports is the key. This refers to the editorial, not a zero sum game. By delaying the democratic process of delimitation since 1976, we have done injustice to Central and North India. There is no law on childbirth, so if a state has higher population, you can't just snatch away its democratic right. Saying the next delimitation will not be based on population is tantamount to adding insult to injury. It's a clear matter of choice unless we have a law restricting childbirth. There is no law on childbirth, so if a state has a higher population, you can't just snatch away its democratic right. It seems all sense have lost on the US president who shared his social media an AI generated video depicting the dystopian Trump Gaza. Needed the big leap. The era of incremental progress on AI is over. With nations competing to dominate the ecosystem, India needs to do more than be a participant. The past 6 weeks have shattered conventional wisdom about AI dominance. A new era of innovation, disruption, and geopolitical maneuvering has arrived. Those who fail to adapt risk being left behind. January brought a stark wake up call with the emergence of DeepSeek. The Chinese startup unveiled its AI model DeepSeek R1, which matched the capabilities of leading models like OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, which is also being open source and free. This breakthrough wasn't just technological feat, it was a warning shot. The balance of AI power is shifting, proving that true innovation isn't just about resources, but about the speed, efficacy, and strategic intent behind them. True innovation isn't just about resources, but about the speed, efficacy, and strategic intent behind them. Meanwhile, AI Action Summit in Paris, where leaders from nearly 100 nations convened to shape AI's future, sent a resounding message: growth must growth must take precedence over excessive regulation. A defining moment came when France unveiled a 109 billion euros AI investment plan, underscoring the urgency of substantial investments to maintaining global competitiveness. In a landmark shift, President Macron of the and the Finnish Minister of Transport and Communications committed to scaling back regulations in Europe to keep pace with the global AI developments. India's advocacy for a human-centric approach, passionately championed by the Prime Minister Modi, also gained traction. The summit concluded with a commitment to inclusive and sustainable AI, ensuring that technology drives labor market growth while aligning with environmental security and social well being. The summit concluded with commitment to inclusive and sustainable AI, ensuring that technology drives labor market growth while aligning with environmental security and social well being. As the world accelerates AI driven innovation and economic expansion, a nation's ability to disrupt and control the AI supply chain is no longer just a competitive advantage. It will determine who writes the rules of the future. DeepSeek's success serves a both wake-up call for the established players and an inspiration for emerging challengers. Kai Fu, former president at Google China, put it aptly: the US is great at research and innovation, and especially breakthroughs, but China is better at engineering. In this day and age, when you have limited compute power and money, you learn how to build things efficiently. This insight underscores the critical role of engineering excellence and R&D prowess in advancing artificial intelligence. Faced with export controls, Chinese AI companies shifted their focus to optimizing model architecture, leading to breakthroughs. These include pure reinforcement learning or enabling AI models to refine themselves through self-play and real-world feedback, a mixture of experts architecture, or activating only a fraction of parameters per task, dramatically reduces computational cost while enhancing efficiency. DeepSeek's success serves a both wake-up call for the established players and inspiration for emerging challengers. Kai-Fu Lee, former president of Google China, put it aptly: the US is great at research and innovation, and especially breakthroughs, but China is better at engineering. In this day and age, when you have limited compute power and money, you learn to build things very efficiently. The insight underscores the critical role of engineering excellence and R&D prowess in advancing artificial intelligence. Faced with export controls, Chinese AI companies shifted their focus to optimizing model architecture, leading to breakthroughs. Optimizing model architecture leading to breakthroughs. These include pure reinforcement models or enabling AI models, pure reinforcement models or enabling AI models to refine themselves through self-play and real-world feedback. Through self-play and real-world feedback, a mixture of experts architecture or activating only a fraction of parameters per task dramatically reduces computational cost while enhancing efficiency. This includes pure reinforcement learning or enabling mixed AI models to refine themselves through self-play and real-world feedback, mixture of experts architecture and activating only a fraction of parameters per task reduces computational cost while enhancing efficiency. Multi-head latent attention or improving data processing by identifying nuanced relationships and handling multiple input aspects simultaneously, and distillation techniques that involve efficiently transferring knowledge from large models to smaller or more adaptable ones. In addition, China's pivot to NVIDIA's proprietary CUDA to PTX isn't just a workaround, it's a strategic masterstroke. By breaking free from a locked ecosystem, they are ensuring that AI advancements remain resilient, adaptable, and unshackled from external constraints. This isn't about efficiency, it's about rewriting the rules of AI dominance. These advancements prove the necessity fuels innovation, and that the new disruptors of in the AI era will be those who master both breakthrough research and cost-effective scalable engineering. In the final days of his tenure, former US President Biden issued two pivotal directives aiming at securing US leadership on AI. On January 13, his administration introduced interim final rule to regulate the export of GPUs, a critical component for AI development. This measure aimed to restrict the transfer of advanced AI enabling technologies to adversaries while ensuring streamlined exports to allies. The very next day, Biden signed an executive order prioritizing clean energy development of AI data centers, directing federal agencies to lease land for infrastructure projects powered by low or zero carbon sources. Interestingly, while President Donald Trump swiftly revoked Biden's Interestingly, while President Donald Trump swiftly revoked Biden's AI safety order, these two directives have remained untouched, at least for now. Vice President Vance has since reaffirmed the US's intent to dominate AI with a sharp focus on chips software, and regulatory influence. The AI race has reached a breaking point. Nations are no longer just competing on innovation or battling for control. Those who lead will shape the future, while those who lag will find themselves dependent, vulnerable, and left behind in the new AI world, AI order. As the industry and nations adapt to this new paradigm of AI development, the coming months and years will witness intensified competition and rapid advancements. The global AI landscape is no longer just about progress, it's about who drives the disruption, who gets left behind. The world is increasingly dividing into two camps, disruptors and disruptees. The pressing question for countries is which side you will be on. India stands at a decisive juncture. Our aspiration to become a developed nation by 2047, Viksit Bharat, is not merely an ambitious goal but a defining mission that requires a fundamental transformation of our economy and society. The shift hinges on ability to unlock the full potential of emerging technologies like AI to drive the transformation. For India, the era of incremental progress is over. If we are to achieve Viksit Bharat by 2047, we cannot afford to be mere participants in the AI revolution. We must lead its disruption. Our success will depend on three non negotiable imperatives: one, the world talent; two, AI excellence; and global competitiveness. The two, cutting edge R&D and innovation to ensure India is not just a consumer of AI but a creator of breakthrough technologies, and three, uncompromising commitment to human centric AI, ensuring that innovation serves society and strengthening our global standing. Our success will depend on three non-negotiable imperatives: one, world-class talent to drive AI excellence and global competitiveness; two, cutting-edge R&D and innovation to ensure India is not just a consumer; and three, uncompromising commitment to human-centric AI. This must be hallmark of India's AI leadership, one that is bold, visionary, and unapologetically ambitious. As PM Modi aptly reminded the world at the AI Action Summit, as AI writes the code for humanity, we humans must hold the key to shaping its futures responsibly. The senior who changed my life, he was my pillar of support. With his sharp intellect, great oratory, Iqbal M. Chagla towered his colleagues seniors at the bar. The lineage of all thoroughbred horses can be traced back to legendary Arabian stallions, Darley Arabian, the Barley Turk, and the Godolphin Arabian. Similarly, the legacy of some of India's legal minds can be traced to chambers of Sir Jamshedji Kanga. The Mickey reminded me of Edmond Dantes, the protagonist of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Like Dante, he was tall, imposing, and swashbuckling figure with a French goatee. His barrister's half jacket, worn beneath his counsel's gown, gave the impression of a flowing cape, reinforcing the image of Dantes. The only thing missing was the sword slung in scabbard at his waist. By reason his professional integrity and high ethical standards, Mickey commanded the highest respect in whichever court he walked into. Although he was not a commerce graduate, by dint of his hard work and ability to understand and digest most complex of problems, he soon became one of the most foremost commercial lawyers in the country. Sir Jamshedji Kanga. Iqbal M. Chagla. The original side of the Bombay High Court is a unique tradition where law graduates join chambers of established seniors. Unlike other regions where juniors are salaried, No remuneration is expected or paid. The goal is to let juniors attend conferences, read briefs, assist, and accompany seniors to court, learning advocacy in all its facets. More than training, this tradition fosters a lifelong guru Shishya bond that transcends the professional relationship. The work-life balance Mickey encouraged has stayed with me through the years. In his chambers, I learned that work was work and play was play. I cannot forget the wonderful times I had as a junior in what he called the tea club. This was short time after the court when we gathered for tea and snacks. The first rule was to keep work and court matters off the table, allowing for light-hearted conversations. India's textiles and apparel industry is primed to weave a narrative for growth. One goal that India must prioritize if it has to become Viksit Bharat by 2047 is job creation. The textiles and apparel industry is India's second largest employer after agriculture, providing direct employment to 45 million people. The sector is expected to motor on an annual growth rate of 10% and become $250 billion market by 2030, with the potential to add millions of more jobs. If our exports grow from the current $45 billion to a target of $100 billion, and if the economy grows at a 6 to 7% a year, the textiles could add up to 1 million jobs per year from now to 2030, 10% of what the country needs. This is all very good, but we have an opportunity to be great. China, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, the world's three leading textile exporters, are undergoing shifts for reasons ranging from geopolitical to internal turmoil. Global markets are increasingly looking towards India. We have a lot going for us, a relatively stable economy and government, good relationships with the world leading nations, centuries old textile tradition, and a young population. The government has been forward-looking in its support of the industry. It has approved various schemes with outlays of several thousand crores with that incentivize the sector, such as Pradhan Mantri Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks, Pradhan Mantri Mega Integrated Textile Region, Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel, Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks, Pradhan Mantri Mitra Parks, Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks, Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks, Production Linked Incentive Scheme and rebate of road and central taxes and levies, rebate of state and central taxes and levies, rebate of state and central taxes and levies scheme. The US $100 billion Indian textile market presents a huge domestic opportunity. A burgeoning middle class is driving demand, and this trend is further amplified by Gen Z. The mainstreaming of e-commerce and the emerging of e-commerce, quick commerce, has eased people's access to apparel and fashion. While there are lulls during the crisis like COVID or during recessionary phases, Indians retain a healthy consumption practice appetite. With so many pieces of jigsaw ready, how do we ensure labor efficiency and thereby generate more jobs? India suffers a 15 to 20% cost disadvantage compared to competing countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam. A big component of this is lower efficiency in the labor intensive garment and manufacturing process. How do we remedy this? These are some of my suggestions. Often in India, if the jobs are in one hub, the workers are elsewhere. Even Tirupur, the apparel mega hub in Tamil Nadu, has a labor shortage because industries there are growing fast and workers quite often On the other hand, places like Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, and Madhya Pradesh, where jobs need to be created, there's barely any industry. So India will have to create jobs where they are required. This is why important to build the PM Mitra parks in areas where labor is available. The rate of attrition in our textile industry is as high as 10%. Workers often have to spend a big part of their salary in transport and accommodation and are liable to leave their present employer even for a small wage hike. Many of them tend to be migrants. This has a huge impact on production and eventually bottom line. Implementing industrial housing policy can be a game changer. It could be a combination of grant easing FSI regulations or giving GST exemptions for industrial housing. Creating living quarters for workers near factories is as is done in countries like China could reduce absenteeism, improve staff retention and lead to higher productivity. It will also increase the amount of take home salary for workers. Textiles are low margin business, however, manufacturers alone cannot pick up the tab for such huge infrastructure. It will need to be supported by the government. A defining feature of the garment industry is that women represent 90% of its blue collar workforce. Stable jobs and safe environments empower women. It can bring them into the formal economy and take the nation forward. Automation is often associated with efficiency and reduced manpower. However, technology and human talent will continue to coexist. When efficiency goes up, the industry will grow, creating more jobs. The challenges may seem formidable, but are surmountable given India's demographic and economic heft. With a little recalibration, India can seize the opportunity and establish itself as a giant in the global textile landscape. A new American empire, Trump administration is rewriting rules of engagement and Europe has a little role in it. In the latest Euro episode of Ukraine war, the United States voted to block a Europe-backed UN resolution calling for de-escalation and a peaceful resolution of the conflict, which it held Russia responsible. As a result, it found itself aligned with Russia, Belarus, Iran, North Korea, and along with Israel and smattering of poor and dependent states in Africa and Pacific. While much is being made of America's unprecedented abandonment of its European allies, the latter has themselves very recently sided against the rest of the world in refusing to condemn Israel's war in Gaza. Having stood by the US in supporting the war in Gaza and Lebanon, Europe now finds itself having to defend an international order it has done everything to diminish. The coming together of the West over Gaza was perhaps meant to mirror the solidarity that had been generated by the war in Ukraine, but between them, the two wars did more to destroy the West than augment its strength because each was based on subverting the international order that had been given the West its unity since the end of World War II. It is only now dawning on European politicians that the most serious threats the West faces as geopolitical actors is neither Russia's army nor China's economy. Even Muslims and migrants, long favorable internal enemies of Europe's populist, pale in insignificance before the external threats posed by US policy on Russia and Ukraine, Canada and Mexico, and Europe's military and economic status. While it is tempting to attribute this challenge solely to the Donald Trump administration, it has been in the making for much longer under Democrat-led administrations that under Republican ones. The end of Cold War allowed the US to dispense with its old allies as well as its now defunct enemies. Since the former no longer held the same importance without the latter, the shift remained hidden for some time as the American worked with Europe to globalize the world economy and usher in the former Soviet republics and the EU. But in doing so, it also eviscerated the international order that had been put in place after the World War II, one which had depended among the engagement with enemies as part of the UN system. Once liberated from such enemies, the international order represented by the UN could be sidelined for the unilateral military action by US led forces in places like Serbia and Iraq. These were often coupled with unilateral sanctions that sought to exclude recalcitrant state and non state actors from a globalized economy. With only occasional dissent, Europe went along with these moves. Its leaders did not realize that dismantling the national order gradually turned them into vassals, not allies. It is now only dawning on European politicians that most serious threat the West faces as a geopolitical actor is neither Russia's army nor China's economy. Even Muslim and migrants, long the favorite internal enemies of Europe's populist, pale in insignificance before the external threat posed by US policy on Russia and Ukraine, Canada, Mexico, on Europe's military and economic status. While it is tempting to attribute this challenge solely to Trump administration, it has been in the making for much longer under Democrat-led administrations and under Republican ones. End of Cold War allowed the US to dispense with its old allies as well as its now defunct enemies. Since the former no longer held the same importance without the latter, the shift remained hidden for some time as the Americans worked with Europe to globalize the world economy and usher in former Soviet republics into the EU. But in doing so, it also eviscerated the international order that it has put in place after World War II, one which had depended upon the engagement with enemies as part of the UN system. Once liberated from such enemies, the international order represented by the UN could be sidelined for unilateral military action by the US led forces in places like Serbia and Iraq. These were often coupled with unilateral sanctions and sought to exclude recalcitrant state and non state. Once the end of the Cold War allowed US to dispense its cold allies as well as now defunct enemies, since the former no longer held the same importance without the latter. The shift remained hidden for some time as Americans worked with Europe to globalize the world economy and usher in former Soviet republics into the EU. But in doing so, it also eviscerated the international order that had been put in place after World War II, one which had depended upon the engagement with enemies as part of the UN system. Once liberated from such enemies, the international order represented by the UN could be sidelined for unilateral military action by US led forces in Serbia and Iraq. These were often coupled with unilateral sanctions that sought to exclude recalcitrant state and non-state actors from new globalized economy. With only occasional dissent, Europe went along with these moves. Its leaders did not realize that dismantling the international order gradually turned them into vassals and not allies. This shift also has significant domestic consequences for both Americans and Europeans. Their states no longer required the kind of popular support that was crucial in fact, in facing the Soviet threat, this was demonstrated in abandonment of Keynesian and welfare state for the globalization of capital that moved manufacturing to Asia or so fragmented the old industrial working class with it the entire social structure. Globalization also made it impossible to separate domestic from international concerns. Terrorism and migration came to represent these blurring of spheres in popular understanding, with politicians increasingly sacrifice domestic needs for international considerations in free trade deals, as well as wars and military interventions around the world. Public opinion in the West, which has been solidly against interventions like those in Iraq and Gaza, routinely shut out of political debates in favor of wage issues and cultural wars against internal enemies. Without long-standing electoral constituencies, political parties in America and Europe have now taken over by adventurers. This is what happened to the Republicans when Trump evicted its old elite and took over the party in 2016. In the meantime, the far right presents perverted visions of public opinion to increase receptive electorate that feels shut out of regular party politics. Trump represents the culmination of these developments, inveighing against a discredited deep state and mainstream media only to empower his friends, relatives, and tech oligarchs who now shape public opinion through algorithms as new forms of censorship. He pursues long needed political initiatives such as implementing ceasefire in Gaza or ending the war in Ukraine in a worst possible way, with proposals to ethnically cleanse one place and gain mineral rights in the other. This apparent display of power, however, masks its own fragility as much as that of America's political system. While commentators are fond of following Trump by taking William McKinley as his model for new American empire, a more realistic assumption might be James Monroe and his vision of America's power. Trump's efforts to subordinate Canada, Mexico, and Panama Greenland to US power looks like making of a new Monroe Doctrine for a Western Hemisphere, and that its original as in the original abandons Europe to a world in which it no longer has any special claim to American assistance. While Monroe Doctrine has signaled America's rise, its reprise, however, is a manifestation of its decline. For a world in which India, Russia, and China might get more favorable treatment than Britain, France, and Germany is the one US hegemony has collapsed, and with the idea of the West. If they cannot become its rival, Europeans will now have to pay for the privilege of serving as America's vassals. The policies inaugurated by the Trump administration will have enormous consequences but are unlikely to succeed in their goals. Globalization has led to emergence of new economic and military powers in the world outside the West, and these cannot be dragooned into serving as America's allies as Europe once had. The strength of the far right in both the US and Europe depends upon its recognition of West's decline, but it is also a symptom of that decline and can only accelerate it. Race, religion, and civilization have come to define the West because it can no longer dominate the international order, it has chosen to destroy it. Uptick downturn after second quarter slump, economy has picked up pace. Concerns over the robustness of the momentum remain. After slowing down sharply in the second quarter of this on the ongoing financial year, Indian economy has rebounded in third quarter, growing at 6.2% as per data released by National Statistical Office. The rebound, which was driven more by government spending and private consumption, was expected as several high frequency indicators had pointed in that direction. With this estimate, growth for the year so far comes to 6.1%. Along the NSO has revised upwards its estimate for full year growth. It has now pegged the economy to grow at 6.5% in 24-25, up marginally from its earlier estimate of 6.4%. However, despite this upward revision, revised estimates for last year growth, the economy is now estimated to have grown at 9.2% in 23-24, in part due to higher government spending for which relatively more timely and accurate data is available shows a steep in the deceleration growth has been seen. This is largely due to industrial sector, particularly manufacturing. The sector is expected to grow at 4.3% this year, down from 12.3% last year. And while both construction and electricity, gas, and water supply segments continue to grow at relatively healthy rates, they have witnessed a slight moderation. With services sector, most segments have grown at a slower clip this year. Agriculture, though, has fared better. Agri activities have also been healthy due to strong Kharif output. The healthy Rabi sowing Implicit in NSO's latest data is the expectation that economy will grow at 7.6% in the fourth quarter. This could be challenging considering the recent data on core sectors show that in January electricity production grew at 1.3%, steel by 3.7%, coal by 4.6%. However, a pickup in rural demand and government spending, the center's capex rose by 51% in January, could provide a fillip to economic activities. The last few quarters have seen a soaring of investor sentiment. On Friday, the BSE Sensex fell 1.9%, ending the day at 73,000. Since its peak of 85,000 on September 27, the Sensex has fallen around 15%. The fall has been driven by a combination of global and domestic factors. On the global front, Donald Trump moves on tariff base heavily rely, rely heavily on investors. While on domestic front, corporate results have been subdued and growth concerns, the sharp fall in growth from last year does suggest that further monetary easing is on the cards. Inflation has been trending lower in January. It has fallen to 4.31%, with analysts expecting for prices to fall further in February, the last print before the next meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee in April. It then increases the odds of more rate cuts. End the gun culture with militias surrendering weapons. Possibilities of peace in Manipur have increased. Center shouldn't let opportunities slip. In Manipur, now upon the president's rule, part of reason for the ethnic conflict persisting is the flow of small arms. Thousands of firearms, including assault rifles, carbines, ammunition, have been looted reportedly from the police stations and armories, enabling village volunteer organizations such as Meeti and Kuki militia groups to engage in armed confrontations. The situation is compounded by the fact that Manipur shares a porous border with Myanmar, a known arms smuggling hub. Security forces have struggled to curb gun violence and disarm militias despite the recovery of small quantities in arms in combating combing operations. Last week, Manipur Governor Ajay Kumar Bhalla did the right thing in issuing an appeal to people of all communities to surrender looted and illegally held weapons. On Thursday, the deadline is set by the governor. The Meeti radical group Arambai Tengal surrendered 246 weapons in Imphal West. Apart from them, more than 100 weapons were surrendered this week in different parts of the state. Last week's initiative was not the first time a call to surrender looted weapons was issued in the strife-torn state. In June 23, a few weeks into the ethnic conflict, a drop box for returning weapons was set up outside the home of a BJP legislator from Imphal East with a poster carrying a message in English and Methi language. Please drop your snatched weapons here. According to the last update in September 24 by the security advisor to the Manipur government, Kuldeep Singh, 1,200 of approximately 6,000 looted weapons has been recovered. While thousands of weapons continue to remain in circulation, it is assumed that last major shootout in Manipur occurred in the early hours of January 1 in the Kadang Band area of Imphal West District, hours after the Chief Minister N. Biren Singh's New Year's apology. Easy availability of arms made it difficult to restrict the conflict to few localities in Manipur. Sense of insecurity among arising from the Biren Singh government's continued administrative failures created fertile grounds for radical groups in all parts of the state to take matter in their own hands. Until all looted weapons are recovered and militias are disarmed, a permanent peace, for not merely the absence of war, would remain elusive. Cross-border arms flow will also have to be stopped. Failure to do so would diminish the advantage gained by the state with surrender and recovery of looted weapons. With radical groups starting to agree to surrender looted weapons, center has chance to finally break the cycle of violence. It must not let opportunity slip. EPFO's board recommend 8.25% interest rate for FY25 same as FY24. From banks and insurers to cement travel firms, GST notices pile up. India needs accelerated reforms to reach high income status by 2047. For India to reach a high income country, gross national income per capita would have to increase to nearly 8 times from $2,500 in 2023 and 14 to $14,000. And between those in 4,500 to 14,000 were upper middle income countries. To meet this criteria, given the less conducive external environment, India would not only maintain ongoing initiatives, would in fact expand and intensify reforms. Investment will peak at 37% of GDP and growth will average 6.6% each year. With accelerated reforms, on the other hand, investment share of investment in GDP will reach 40% by 2035 and economy will grow at 7.8%. The rate of gross capital formation to GDP was 31.4% in FY24 at current prices. The MOSPI on Friday revised the real GDP growth rate for FY24 to 9.2% and estimated growth in FY25 at 6.5%. You are gambling with World War II, Trump 2. You are gambling with World War III, Trump to Zelensky. US President tells his Ukrainian counterpart to be more thankful as meet turns into shouting match. Ukrainian President Zelensky and Trump clashed repeatedly on Friday, with Zelensky urging Trump to be cautious with Russia and Trump accusing him of being disrespectful. Israel Hamas begin talks on next phase of ceasefire. Egypt. India EU to seal trade deal this year. Trump keen on markets reeling. Expedite conclusion of FTA by the end of the year. Further talks on defense and policy to explore new initiatives. Review meeting with partners to take stock on the IMAC initiative. Engage on maritime domain awareness. Promote shared assessment, coordination and interoperability. Deepen cooperation in semiconductors. Enhance dialogue on clean energy. Strengthen collaboration in the Indo-Pacific and strengthen cooperation in disaster management. Manipur governor extends deadline to surrender illegal weapons till March 6. SAR to review security situation in Manipur today. Union Home Minister will review the security situation in Manipur Saturday, the first such meeting after the imposition of the president rule in the northeastern state. Manipur has been witnessing ethnic violence since May 2023 and 250 people have lost their lives in the restive state since then. The Home Minister will review the security situation in Manipur on Saturday. Governor Ajay Kumar Bhalla, top officials of the Manipur government, army, paramilitary forces will attend the meeting. GDP growth shows uptake, but quarter 4 key for 6.5% growth in FY25. Drug shortage, project delays. CAG reports red flags lapses in healthcare. Justice system will be strong only when it is inclusive. In UGC draft to curb campus bias, equity panel for quick action squads to keep vigil. Annual migration saves hundreds of residents at Avalanche Hill, Chamoli village. Sufi saints read Quran, listen to voices of Vedas. Prime Minister. Neighbors have no choice, push for India-Pakistan dialogue resumption from both sides. Violence kills what it intends to create. So that's all for today. See you in the next one.